Hi there, John McAdams here with you again. In this video, I share the results of 5 different ballistic gel tests for the 22 Hornet using 4 different types of ammo. So first, I shoot this Hornady ammo from their Varmint Express line with a 35 grain VMAX. Then I shot this 35 grain Tipped Varmageddon bullet from the Nosler Varmageddon line. Then I shot this 45 grain soft point from S&B. And then I also shot this 45 grain soft point from Remington. Finally, I also shot that Remington ammo into a block of gel with a shoulder blade embedded in it. So I did 4 bare gel tests, 1 for each type of ammo, and then I did a 5th test for the Remington ammo with that shoulder blade embedded in it to see how this little cartridge would perform after impacting bone. Now, I did all of the shooting for this test using a borrowed rifle with a 24-inch long barrel, 1 in 16-inch twist rate. And I shot all of this stuff into gel blocks 50 yards away. And as always, I measured all velocities with my Garmin chronograph. Now, we'll start with the 35 grain VMAX. In each case, I'll shoot that load into the gel, do a brief analysis of how it performed, and then move on to the next load. So, let's get started. Okay, here's how the 35 grain VMAX performed. Very short neck, just like we like to see, and an impressive wound cavity with lots of fragmentation. There's pieces of that lead core going everywhere, there, and a very shallow maximum penetration depth of about 7 inches. But all in all, exactly like I would expect with a very soft varmint bullet like this. More details in a second. Okay, I pulled what was left of that 35 grain VMAX out of the gel. As you can see, we had near complete fragmentation. I just recovered the base of the bullet with a tiny bit of lead still attached. It weighed just 9.3 grains, and there were a couple of pieces of copper jacket found nearby, but that was basically all that was left of it. Everything else fragmented into the gel before it reached the end of the wound track like that. Bottom line, this bullet behaved exactly like you want a varmint bullet to behave. Velocity, very close to advertised, actually a little faster than advertised in this case. It also shot great in my rifle. It was actually the best performing in terms of accuracy out of everything I shot in this test. I would not hesitate one bit to hunt predators or varmints with this stuff. It seems to perform exactly as advertised, with a large but shallow wound cavity. Probably pretty fur friendly too, not likely to exit something like a coyote. Okay, now let's move on to the Nosler ammo. Okay, here is how the Tipped Varmageddon bullet did in gel. Nice short neck, pretty impressive wound cavity here, just a couple of inches into the gel. Not very much penetration. Looks like it stops around the 6.75 inch mark. But we have a short, wide wound cavity with lots of fragmentation, just like we like to see with a varmint bullet. More details in a second. Now, the 35 grain Tipped Varmageddon did indeed fragment quite a bit, but not quite as much as the 35 grain VMAX. The remaining chunk of this bullet weighed 14.5 grains, so about 41.5% weight retention. It expanded to nearly twice its original diameter. Now, this bullet also had lots of expansion and lots of fragmentation, and I recovered just a little bit more of it than the 35 grain VMAX, but still not very much. I just have the rear portion of the jacket with a little bit of lead still attached. It also behaved exactly like you want a varmint bullet to behave. Velocity was also a little bit faster than advertised, and it also shot great out of my rifle. Not quite as accurate as the Hornady stuff, but still really good. Now, your mileage may vary. The Hornady ammo may shoot better for you, or the Nosler ammo may shoot better for you out of your rifle. You just have to see, but I was very happy with the accuracy of both of these loads out of my particular rifle. Now, just like the Hornady ammo, I would not hesitate one bit to hunt predators or varmints with this Nosler ammo. It also seems to perform exactly as advertised. Probably also pretty fur friendly and also not likely to exit something like a coyote. Now, there was not a lot of variation in performance with the Nosler versus the Hornady stuff either, at least based off of what I observed with each one in this test. Either should work great for you on predators. I would recommend either whichever one is easier for you to obtain or whichever one your rifle seems to prefer. Okay, now let's move on to the 45 grain S&B ammo. This is a heavier bullet. Now, you could use it on predators and varmints, but this would seem to be a better choice on something like a deer at first glance if you want to use the 22 Hornet for that sort of work because it's heavier. So let's see how it performed. Okay, here's how the 45 grain S&B soft point performed. Pretty short neck, but after we get past that neck, not a lot happens. We have a wound cavity that looks like it's a little bit bigger than the bullet diameter, and it continues to penetrate in a straight line, also not doing too much. It looks like it drops down a little bit in size there, continues to penetrate into a straight line. We get a little bit of something going on there, and then the bullet stops right between 26 and 27 inches of penetration. And as you can see, it does not look like that bullet expanded at all. More details in a second. As I suspected, there was basically no expansion for this bullet. There was a flattened nose, but that's about it. Now, this bullet did lose a little bit of weight, came out of the gel at 42.5 grains or 94.4% weight retention. But as I suspected, just looking at it when it was still embedded in the gel block, there was basically no expansion. The nose was flattened out a little bit, and a tiny bit of those fragments went into the gel, but that is it. This is not what I like to see out of a hunting bullet. Now, this stuff had a slower advertised velocity of 2,346 feet per second, and it failed to achieve that velocity. So it was going really slow, and it was actually only going about 2,200 feet per second when it impacted these gel blocks just 50 yards downrange. Now, this bullet did not expand for whatever reason, possibly because it was going too slow. Now, I spoke with a gentleman in my audience who has taken a number of deer over the years with a 22 Hornet. He likes this 45 grain S&B soft point and the 45 grain Remington soft point I'll show you in a minute. Now, he said that the S&B ammo penetrates better and he is more likely to get exits with it versus the Remington ammo. This matches up with what I saw here. However, I was disappointed with the lack of expansion and the narrow wound cavity this bullet produced. I'm not 100% certain what is going on, but I will discuss a possible explanation at the end of the video. But long story short, penetration is great with this stuff, expansion was not. Accuracy was good. It did not shoot as well as the 35 grain Nosler or Hornady ammo, but it was still acceptable. Okay, speaking of that Remington ammo, that is what is up next. Okay, here's how the Remington load did for the 22 Hornet. Nice short neck, medium-sized wound cavity. Certainly smaller than what we saw with the two Varmint loads, but much more impressive than what we saw with the S&B load. Penetration is about 11 inches, so not nearly as much penetration as the S&B load either, but it clearly looks like we have a lot more expansion with this bullet too, and a much more impressive wound cavity. I'll pull this bullet out and get you some more details. That bullet held together surprisingly well and lost just a little bit of weight, even though it mushroomed pretty well. final retained weight was 44.5 grains for nearly 99% weight retention. It had a beautiful mushroom with excellent expansion, actually just over 2 times the original diameter expansion to go with that great weight retention. Now, penetration was better than what I observed with the varmint loads, but not nearly as deep as the S and B ammo. This is probably a result of the Remington ammo expanding to about 2 times the original diameter, which hampered penetration versus the S and B stuff, which did not expand at all and was therefore not subject to that additional drag you get from having a larger frontal diameter like that. But this Remington ammo also held together really well, and that is probably what resulted in better penetration versus the varmint loads, which basically completely came apart like you want a varmint bullet to do. This bullet produced an impressive wound cavity. It's not as large as the varmint loads, but it's still pretty good, especially considering the sedate velocity of the cartridge. Now, this 45 grain Remington soft point did not shoot as well as the 35 grain loads out of my rifle. Like I said, my rifle seemed to prefer the lighter stuff, but it was still plenty accurate. Your mileage may vary though. Now, this ammo is more likely to exit something like a coyote than the varmint loads, but probably it's not excessively rough on fur. I'd point you towards the varmint loads if you wanted the absolute best possible stuff for that use. That said, it will still get the job done, like you see with this Jackal. This was about a 200-yard shot. The Jackal dropped in its tracks. The bullet exited, but it did not do tremendous damage to the hide. Now, the other advantage that you would get by going with a varmint bullet in this cartridge is you have a much higher velocity. That's, 400 plus feet per second faster. That will make your trajectory a little bit flatter going with the lighter varmint bullets versus this heavier soft point from Remington. So like I said, this will work too, but that is an advantage of the lighter bullets. Now, that said though, of everything I shot in this test, this Remington ammo is what I would lean towards for someone that wanted to use a 22 Hornet on something like a deer. Now, that 45 grain soft point worked great on this Warthog, and it did not go far afterwards, maybe 20 to 30 yards after the shot, and the bullet did exit. Now, on the other hand, my grandfather did not have as good of results when he shot a deer with his 22 Hornet back in the 1950s. I am not 100% certain, but I am pretty sure he used a Remington load very similar to this 45 grain soft point, if this is not exactly what he used back then. In any case, this buck was quartering towards him and he shot it in the shoulder with that 45 grain soft point. He said the bullet failed to reach the vitals of that animal and it caused a nasty but probably not immediately fatal wound. The deer staggered at the shot but remained on its feet and gave him time to shoot again. This time he shot it in the head and the deer dropped in its tracks. With that in mind, I decided to shoot this Remington ammo into gel with a feral hog shoulder blade embedded in it. Now, that shoulder blade was from a hog that weighed about 150 pounds, so it's not exactly the same as a deer, but it's still reasonably close and still should provide interesting information on how this little bullet performs when striking bone. So here's how it did. Okay, here is how the Remington ammo performed in the gel with the shoulder blade embedded in it. As you can see, it punched through that shoulder blade and there are bone fragments and pieces of the bullet everywhere in there. Wound cavity is similar in size, maybe a little bigger than the Bare Gel Test for this same ammo, and the bullet penetrated to right about there, just past 9 inches into this gel block. I'll pull it out, get you some more info. Okay, this recovered bullet weighed 27.9 grains for about 62% weight retention. And remember, this bullet had 99% weight retention in bare gel. This bullet expanded to well over 2.5 times the original diameter at 0.6 inches. So just like you might expect, this bullet had more expansion and less weight retention after hitting that bone. Now, I misspoke earlier. This bullet actually produced a little bit smaller diameter wound cavity than it did in bare gel. This is probably a result of the bullet fragmenting so much after punching through that shoulder blade. And as you can see here, it had nearly 20% less penetration than this exact same bullet in bare gel after it went through the shoulder blade. Now this does match up pretty well to what I would expect when you take a bullet and shoot it through a shoulder blade and compare it to how that same bullet will do in bare gel. Now that said, results in clear gel like this don't normally translate one-to-one into real-world situations on game. In general, bullets tend to penetrate better but not make as large of a wound cavity in clear gel like this versus a real-life animal. So these results should be taken as a general trend, and I'm talking about all of the results in this video. I'm not saying that if a bullet penetrates 9.125 inches in ballistic gel, that it will penetrate exactly 9.125 inches in real animals from every angle, regardless of what it hits. I'm saying that if a bullet demonstrates wide, shallow penetration in gel, it will also produce wide, shallow penetration in animals. The same is true of narrow, deep penetration. And the general shape and characteristics of the wound will be similar. Likewise, if bullet A penetrates better than bullet B in gel, well, it will probably also penetrate better than bullet B in an animal. And a bullet that holds together better in gel will probably hold together better in an animal, etc. So even though this Remington bullet made it just over 9 inches, even after punching through that shoulder blade, it likely won't actually go exactly that far in an animal after punching through its shoulder blade in that same spot. Furthermore, if that bullet hit a rib bone after punching through the shoulder blade, which is certainly possible, well, that bullet would probably penetrate even less than it would after just hitting the shoulder blade, for instance, and slipping between the ribs. It's possible in a situation like that that the bullet may not enter the body cavity at all, like my grandfather reported. Now this matches up with the experiences of the guy in my audience I was telling you about earlier. He said he also hunted with this 45 grain Remington soft point, and he said he would often find the bullet in the near shoulder outside the rib cage if he shoots the deer squarely on the shoulder. Now, along those same lines, this may be an explanation for why the S&B ammo performed the way it did. Indications are that it is a tougher bullet than that Remington bullet. It's possible it was just going too slow and is too tough for expansion in clear gel like this at that velocity. It is certainly possible that it will expand better on a deer, for instance, even at that slower velocity. And remember, it was going about 200 feet per second slower out of my rifle than that Remington stuff that was the same weight bullet. So if that happens, right, if you shoot this S&B ammo at a deer and it expands better than what I experienced here, I'd still say the general trend we talked about here is likely to hold true for that. That is to say, the S&B bullet will probably penetrate better than the Remington bullet, but it will also make a more narrow wound cavity. So take that for what you will. Now, all in all, I think the 22 Hornet is a great cartridge. It has a very mild report, very light recoil, and it is still plenty effective for the ranges most people are likely to use it at. It is definitely an excellent choice for varmints out to a couple hundred yards. Also generally pretty fur friendly. It will also get the job done on larger sized game too. Now remember though, this is a small, low powered cartridge, so you need to be careful with how you use it, especially on bigger game. If you're going to shoot a deer or something like that with it, you need a clean, broadside shot, and you need to ideally put that bullet right behind the shoulder. Avoid quartering shots, and even on a broadside shot, don't shoot the animal squarely on the shoulder. But if you slip it in behind the shoulder and you put a nickel or a quarter-sized hole through the lungs of a deer, well, it won't go far at all. Let me know your thoughts on this subject. Have you used the 22 Hornet afield with any of this ammo? How did it perform for you? I welcome your feedback, especially if you have experience with the S&B ammo on a deer or similar. Likewise, leave a comment on this video and let me know the cartridge bullet combination you would like me to use in the next gel test I publish on YouTube. So far, I have also published a bunch of other gel tests, and they are all on a YouTube playlist for you to peruse. And I'm also open to suggestions from you on what else you would like to see in the future. So leave a comment, let me know what you want to see. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want more content along these lines, one, make sure you subscribe to this channel and like this video. You can also visit huntingguns101.com and sign up there for a free ebook on the best hunting calibers. I've also put a link to a resource I have made on where you can buy all of this ammo in the video description and in the pinned comment, along with where you can get that ebook. So thanks for watching, have a great day, and good hunting.